A lot of people will sit there and say it's a glitch in the matrix. We're living in a simulation. I think that's a possibility, but there is also the possibility of things such as gremlins. I'm not saying actual gremlins, but that's what people were calling it at the time. When these weird things happen that have like very little explanation. You know, in World War II, all these planes are just suddenly breaking down. Your tank is breaking down. All this mechanical equipment is breaking down, and they can't explain it. So they start telling this story about gremlins. That's not good. Speaking of which, I was thinking a lot this weekend about, well, I guess that the best way to put it is I'm not someone who believes in like Catholicism or any sort of like religion like Islam. If you could lump Buddhism in there, which I think is more of a philosophy than anything. No, I don't believe in any of these religions, but I do believe for a larger portion that they are a metaphor. And being that, oh shit, the idea of demons and monsters and astral beings all come from somewhere, whether it's a subconscious thing or something we sort of envision in others. We all seem to think that there is a dark side to everything, that there is an evil to everything. And I think some of that stems from our relations with other human beings and our relations with ourselves even. I've been having some pretty weird dreams lately. And I think dreams associate a lot with maybe your subconscious thoughts, or a lot of times I'll have really weird dreams, like a taste in my mouth or something, and it'll literally be because I fell asleep with something, you know, some sort of component of some sort of food or something where its sweetener is still in my mouth. But lately I've been having dreams with this, God, it's like this sort of cleaning chemical taste in my mouth, and it's just repulsing me, because I think what it was the other week I tried this coffee syrup that is lavender, and I'm just like, why the hell would you put that in your goddamn coffee? It's lavender, and when I put it in my coffee, it tastes like a fucking bathroom. I'm like, how could anyone fucking drink this? It tastes like a goddamn bathroom. So maybe that's where it's been coming from. It just feels like I have took literally every sort of cleaner, whether it's bleach or detergent, degreaser, whatever it is, and just dumped it in my mouth. You know, that's the sort of sensation I have when I'm sleeping, and it's just like, maybe it's a message for like I need to clean my mouth out with soap or something. Maybe I'm swearing too much. Maybe I'm saying things that are too wrong. I don't know. People say multiple things about dreams, and why we have them, what they mean, if they're sort of trying to relay a message to us or whatever. But those are sorts of dreams I've been having lately. And it could be because I'm running my mouth on the internet a lot lately, saying a lot of things that people don't agree with. I've been doing that for a while now, at least on Twitter. I mean, just, it's never been so hyper verbalized as it has been now. But no, I bring this issue up because there's people I know in my life, and they do things which will bring me back to the issue of religion, where it's like, no, I don't believe in any of these religions. The best I can describe myself as, I don't really like saying it. I feel it's a little corny, but to really iterate my feelings towards religion or philosophy or my idea on life and the creation of the universe, the cosmos, whatever, would be to say that I'm a pantheist. No, I'm not someone who worships like the universe or someone who worships the earth, or any sort of spiritual deity. I don't worship anything. I am ultimately, at the end of the day, someone who believes in a sort of universal singularity to everything that is sort of in this illusion of sort of this multifaceted illusion that it's all just separate, when we're all just one. I hate saying this out loud because it sounds like such hippie mumbo kumbaya, sit by a fire and sing sort of jumbo. Like, I hate hearing it too, but it is ultimately how I feel. That is, we are all one. We are all the same thing. But just coming out of my mouth, it's just like, okay, that kind of brings me up to the, oh, peace and love is the answer to everything. No, it's not. No, it's not. The answer is more complicated than that. And I think that's how the universe is too. Yes, the answer is more complicated than either there is no God or there is a God. It is more complicated than that. I mean, just look at how complicated gravity is, okay? just look at the way we orbit the sun and the way the sun orbits the galaxy, and what's at the center of the galaxy is a supermassive black hole. And I mean, it's all very complicated. It's all very complicated. It doesn't have a simple answer to it. And so I do think that there exists forces out there that are related to demons, and this is where we have drawn the idea of demons from, whether it's from a religious standpoint or a metaphorical standpoint. We've got this idea of demons from somewhere, and I do think that there are astral forces, things that exist beyond the veil of our reality. And the veil of our reality is basically what I guess Andrew Tate would call the matrix, what we see as and we define as objective reality. Like, hey, this is a computer, this is a keyboard, I'm looking at a room in front of me. That is the objective reality that we are introduced to. But I think there is something beyond what we see, because what we see is only what our brain is telling us. You know, it is that's the most complicated thing. It's just light being reflected off our eyes and projected to our brain, and this is what our brain is making sense of everything. So I think there's a ton of other things that our brain is not making sense of, and it takes things such as dreams and psychedelics to remove that curtain and show you what's there. So, and I've heard this from multiple people. Tons of people have said they've dealt with things such as astral projections, and I think I've seen them. I think you've probably seen them. I think most people, if you've fallen asleep and you've had dreams, you've probably seen them, is what I'm saying. I think very strange things happen when we are asleep. I don't think it's so simple as you close your eyes and you shut up for a moment. I think a lot of strange, bizarre things happen. We're interacting with things that we are unaware of. So I think a litany of things happen when you sleep. You look at anything that Carl Jung would, you know, sort of superpositioned out there, and it would line up to the sorts of things. He would interact with these sort of imaginary entities in his head, according to a lot of experts and the things that he himself had wrote about. He was very big into parapsychology, which I think, you know, him and Sigmund Freud were good friends, but I think Sigmund Freud really knocked on him for being interested in parapsychology because, you know, he was more of a realist than anything. Carl Jung had dealt with plenty of paranormal experiences in his life. And I think just some people are more susceptible to paranormal experiences, or they're more accepting towards them. Whereas you kind of got the skeptics today. The sort of, and trust me, I'm a skeptic too. I take things with a grain of salt. If something paranormal happens, I'll say, okay, look, there's a good chance that there's a rational explanation, and there's a good chance that there's not a rational explanation. Fucking terrible. No, but I absolutely think that the incarnation of demons, at least in the sort of mental or imaginative aspect, came with some sort of relation we have had with our own sort of evil within ourselves, or with things we have interacted with on a sort of parapsychological scale, you know. And I think a lot of these interactions come through dreams and things like that. So, you know, like I suffer from sleep paralysis quite often. I know plenty of other people who have, but I don't know if this happens with everybody. I know it certainly happens with me, is I will see things sometimes. I remember one time I heard a chainsaw and a man laughing. Another time, I don't want to go into too far detail, but this one was almost 2 or 3 years ago. I saw a headless body interacting with me. It's not like a full-on visual expression of these things. No, that'd be an exaggeration. This is what the mind and brain is telling you. It's a little disturbing. Yeah, these sorts of things do bother me. But at the same time, I know that it's like I've dealt with sleep paralysis so often that I know it's just this thing that happens. But when I do fall under sleep paralysis, I feel that something is deliberately doing this. Something is deliberately doing this to me. And the explanation for sleep paralysis has always been, at least from my understanding, is from having a sort of sporadic, random sleeping pattern. And I've had that for most of my life. Maybe I'll sleep in the day, maybe I'll sleep at night, I'll sleep at this time today, and then I'll sleep at that time tomorrow. If your sleeping pattern is sort of out of sync like mine is, then apparently you're going to be more susceptible to suffering from sleep paralysis. And so I've dealt with it for a long time. It used to scare the fuck out of me. Whoa, it still does to some extent, but you know, I know how to handle it now. And not be so afraid of it. It does suck though, I hate it. The big thing is you just feel so damn vulnerable. It's not every time I feel like something is trying to get me, but there are certainly moments where it's like that painting and you see the demon sitting on the woman's chest, and it certainly feels that way at times, that something is deliberately doing this to you. And it either does it to you for its own amusement or it hates you. But I do think there is a strong chance that this is human psychology at play, and you're sort of making this fictionalized entity in your head, this sort of demon in your head. That's where the skeptical side of me comes out and says, yeah, it's easy for your mind to put blame on something. When something is not there that you can touch, see, and feel, you want to put blame on something. So people come up with demons and things of that nature. But there's also the side to me that's like, this is so potent, and this is so powerful, and this feels like an absolute personality and presence is there, that it's hard for me to look past it and be like, no, I do think there is a force there. So I think sleep paralysis does happen. It's not a demon doing it. It's not an astral force. But if there are astral forces out there, and if there are demons out there, it kind of has a scent for people who are under, you know, the possession of sleep paralysis, and it goes looking for them, you know, to torture them, to put that fear and inflict them with it. So I think, like, if you're going to suffer from sleep paralysis, you're more susceptible to demons, and you are inviting them inside. Which brings me to my second point, is I tend to think, like, I know people who are on heavy, hard, life-destroying drugs. And that's the other thing I believe too. And you'll hear a lot about this. You hear this a lot from, like, people on the right and stuff, but it's something I happen to agree with. I don't agree with their sort of Christian sort of doctrine aspect of it, where they talk about demons and stuff, but I do think people under the impression or influence of drugs and alcohol, that it's sort of like lined up to what I said. If you're putting yourself in this sort of state of vulnerability, that gives the demons, if you can call them that, it gives demons or astral forces, these influences are negative. It gives them more of an invitation to let themselves inside and do things to your mind or your body. So, like, I know people who are on heavy drugs, and they will see things, they will hallucinate things, and it always comes back to, of course, you know, like, the most rational thing is people will say, well, this person has a problem, which is, yeah, I agree that this person has a problem. You know, if you're smoking meth or shooting heroin, you have a problem. but especially with the amphetamines, because people will stay up for like a week, and after staying up for that long, they will crash and they will sleep for like 5 straight days. I hate that drug. I hate it with every fiber of my being. I would rather be around someone who is on crack. But when it comes to meth, it severely fucks with people and their heads. And I tend to think too, it's not only fucking with their heads, it is giving them this sort of, like I said, it opens the doors for these otherworldly forces, or these forces that are here and we just don't see them unless we are under the sort of intoxicating psychedelic or form of sleep, because those are the only times you can see these things. And anyone who has done DMT or ayahuasca will tell you about these things. They talk about mechanical elves and mechanical clowns, and that's the strange thing about it, is if people are seeing the same thing, which can happen. I mean, yeah, like if you see something while you're under the impression of a drug, then the chances of someone else seeing it, I think, you know, if you hear about it and you think about it more often, the chances of you seeing it too is, you know, increased exponentially, because your mind is preparing itself to see something like that. So yeah, I can understand that too. But the overwhelming number of people who see these goddamn elves is just phenomenal, and in one word or the other, because of course I've done DMT. I've never done ayahuasca. I've done DMT, and people have also said aliens. The closest thing I can say is aliens. I could see how people would describe these as elves, but just the overall number of the things people see, the influences that it has on people's minds, is where I draw the next point I was gonna make, is if there are these good entities such as these DMT elves or these mechanical clowns, and I think the bad ones are drawn up by the people who do the very hard life-destroying drugs. And I mean, if you're up for 5 days, you are numbing your brain to such an extent that now you're seeing things. And this is what happens when you are up that long. You will see things. And this is not me talking from personal experience. This is me talking from interacting with people who have been on the influence of this substance, which is quite a bit of people I know. And it's one of the reasons why I hate amphetamines with a passion. But I think once you've been up that long, you've numbed your brain so much, and you've numbed the sort of curtain it puts over itself to block out these otherworldly entities and forces that it doesn't want you to see. And I think that's part of it, is your brain doesn't want you to see these things, so it blocks them out. So when you do the psychedelics or you're sleeping, DMT is being pumped into your brain, that barrier is removed and you begin to see these things. And most philosophers, at least the ones that I have really paid attention to, such as Plato, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, most of them have agreed that the world we see is not objective reality. It's not. And I really don't think that is the truth either. I mean, and you can apply Plato's allegory of the cave to a lot of scenarios, and even the scenario of reality where we think what we see here and now is objective and real, when in reality it's not. You know, the analogy of the cave is this guy escapes and he goes outside and he sees there's an entire world out there. So I do think that we are not seeing everything that is there, and in order to see those things, you have to remove those barriers in your mind, and the only way to do that is through the use of psychedelics or drugs that will show you that the bad things, like, you know, like meth, heroin, stuff like that. And then finally, when people sleep and you're dying, DMT is being released into your brain. DMT is in your brain when you sleep. I think that's what it does, is it eats away at that sort of membrane that is making it all blind to you. Like, imagine there's just like this membrane in your brain, and as the DMT is going through, it's eating it away and removing all the smears and all the smudges so you can see clearly. And I think that's what it does.
Still can't reach the Valor. What's happening with the antenna?
Goodness.
It's blocked by... It's the Leviathan. It must have snagged on the comms array after we spaced it. It's not coming off without a fight.
Isaac, there's no time.
There is if I use the ADS cannons. Manual targeting like before. I can shoot it right off the hull. I got this.
Jesus.
You focus on the Valor.
Will do.
Jesus. Oh my God. Yes. We are indeed in the presence of terrible things. Terrible things. God, that is gross. Look at that thing. Leviathan. It looks like I'm gonna have to take care of that really quick. No, but I do think like there's been a lot of occasions in my life where it's just like things just have a weird habit of showing up in places that I did not put them. And it does seem like there are these mischievous little invisible men or little tiny monsters that come out in the night when I'm sleeping, and they take things and they put them in different spots. And I remember losing a set of keys once for like a year, and I tore the house to pieces looking for it. For 6 months, I looked everywhere. I was, mind you, living by myself. And then a year goes by, and I'm sitting down, and I just look behind me, and there they are, in this little cubby hole that I surely have checked before. It seems I've checked it hundreds of times. I mean, there they are a year later. And it's like, you can't tell me that I just passed them up every time when I literally tore this place to pieces looking for them. And I mean, really weird, strange things has happened like that before. A lot of people will sit there and say, it's a glitch in the Matrix. We're living in a simulation. I think that's a possibility, but there is also the possibility of things such as gremlins. I'm not saying actual gremlins, but that's what people were calling it at the time. When these weird things happen that have like very little explanation. You know, in World War II, all these planes are just suddenly breaking down. Your tank is breaking down. All this mechanical equipment is breaking down, and they can't explain it, so they start telling this story about gremlins. These things have been happening for a long time. It's just people, I don't think they would pay enough attention to them, and I think they happen the most in times of peril, because the theory behind things such as gremlins is, yeah, they do it for their own amusement. There could be these invisible forces out there, these astral entities or demons that do these things for their own amusement. Or there's the possibility that your subconsciousness is affecting it in one way or another. If it's all singular and we're all one, and you know, you have a thought hit this direction, it'll go in that direction later, and things just have a strange, bizarre domino effect to them. Which is sort of why I don't like believing in the law of attraction. Because according to like the law of attraction, if you believe in one thing, it's just going to lead to this chain event of all these other fucking things happening. And no, I don't like the idea of that. But I think Carl Jung had like a belief too about a collective conscious, which I certainly think is a thing, because I find in a lot of situations I'm thinking of something and then other people are thinking of it too, and it can be like the most random thing. Most random thing. Alright. And yeah, lo and behold, other people, they start talking about it, even though I didn't mention it. And I've noticed that too, especially with politics, especially with the news and media. People all of a sudden will just start talking about things, whereas the most terrible thing Like this fucking thing. This thing is fucking terrible. Absolutely fucking terrible. But no, I've noticed that plenty in life. Especially ever